First off, I of course want to thank the people at Y'all Politics for putting this together. You haven't campaigned in an election cycle in Mississippi till you've had a chance to give your stump speech, so I'm thankful for the chance to do that here today. In Federalist Paper number 78, Alexander Hamilton, I think probably in response to people who were concerned about the power of the federal judiciary, wrote and predicted that the federal judiciary was going to be the least powerful or least dangerous branch of the government, always having to protect its power against encroachment from the other two branches. Now, as much as I respect Alexander Hamilton and the other authors of the Federalist Papers, as much as I think the Federalist Papers are a great source when we tried to determine what the federal Constitution meant when it was enacted, that was pretty much a swing and a miss on his part. It seems like for a lot of us, every time the Supreme Court has a term and the opinions start coming down, we grit our teeth as we see opinions coming down that very clearly demonstrate how easily the judiciary exerts power over the other two branches of government, and in doing so, over us. In one of his dissents, the late Justice Scalia wrote that he didn't really care about the particular political issue that was before the court in that case, but he wrote that he cared very much who ruled him. And he didn't think, and he said this in other places as well, of course, he didn't think that under our constitutional form of government, his life should be ruled by 5 lawyers on the United States Supreme Court. You know, these days, we witness these incredibly contentious confirmation hearings in the U.S. Senate for these lifetime appointments to the federal courts. Certainly since the failed nomination of Robert Bork to the United States Supreme Court in the 80s, we see massive amounts of money poured into public media campaigns that seek to influence the votes of the senators at confirmation. You know, with respect to the United States Supreme Court, I think in that respect, we lie in a bed largely of that court's making. I think this increased ferocity and intensity around federal judgeships arises largely from the tendency of that court not to say what the law is, but of individual members of that court over the decades to use the power they've been given to try to shape the law and the Constitution and into what they think it should be for the rest of the country. Now, you might ask, and it would be a very fair question, what does that have to do with an election for the Mississippi Supreme Court? After all, we don't in Mississippi appoint our judges for life. You, the voters, in this case, in my case, the voters of North Mississippi, are going to get to choose whether or not I continue to serve on the Supreme Court. Also, our Supreme Court doesn't decide big national cases that are going to make the front page headlines of our major national papers. But we do decide cases that affect very much the daily lives of Mississippians, of your daily lives. You know, our example of what happens when judges that want to make the law into what they want it to be, and what happens, fortunately for us, it's a historical example, but I was just starting to practice law the tail end of the days of jackpot justice in Mississippi, and I remember when doctors were leaving the state or contemplating leaving the state because they couldn't afford the increased costs of litigation. I remember very clearly when national business organizations were warning businesses, don't go to Mississippi. Don't start a business in Mississippi. Don't open a branch in Mississippi. That place is a judicial hellhole. You know, a lot of people spend a lot of time, a lot of effort turning things around in this state. And I would suggest to the voters of the Northern District that 2020 is no time to dial the clock back to 2000. It is no time to step backwards. You know, 8 years ago when I first ran for this job, I don't think many people knew who I was. Yes, I grew up as part of a family with a long history of public service, and that example was always there, and I'll always be grateful for it. My mother was a public school teacher in the Choctaw County Public Schools. My father was a small town lawyer until he served on the First Court of Appeals later. But I didn't have that many political connections. I didn't have a history of giving campaign donations. What I did was run on a simple message of judicial conservatism, arguing that when judges use their power to bend the law to their will instead of the will of the voters, our system of government is frustrated, and the power that our voters are supposed to have to send the legislators they want to Jackson to enact the laws that they think are best, that power is frustrated. And I think that philosophy is why I was able to garner enough support to win 8 years ago, and I think it's why, if you look at my campaign for re-election this year, you see all the support and endorsements from all the groups and folks that I've gotten this time around, and I appreciate those very much. You know, good judges don't like every result they reach in the cases before them, because good judges don't make the law as they go. Good judges find the law and they apply it to the case. And I am emphatically not running for the re-election to the Mississippi Supreme Court because I want to use the power of that position to remake the law and exercise power to change the law, and accordingly, and what goes with that is change your lives. Instead, I want to serve you. I don't want to be a master. I want to be a servant to the law and to the people of Mississippi by finding out what the law is, as I've done for the past 8 years, and fairly apply that law to the cases before the court, irrespective of persons, as my oath requires. Now look, the Mississippi Supreme Court hears cases from all over the state. We're elected by district, but once you're on the court, there's no geographical division. So everybody in the state of Mississippi, even if you don't live in my district, has an interest in my campaign. So I would encourage those of you who are curious about it, want to find out how to help, to find the campaign Facebook page, like and share things there. My campaign committee also maintains a website at justicejosiahcoleman.com, and I encourage you to visit that. There are suggestions on there on how you can help. But to those who are listening who are in the Northern District, and live with me there, where I've lived my entire life, growing up in Choctaw County, practicing law in Tupelo and Oxford. I lived for about a decade in the little town of Toccopola, Mississippi, in Pontotoc County, where I served in Lafayette and Pontotoc counties as a volunteer firefighter. Now I live again in Choctaw County with my wife and 3 children on the farm that's been in my family for a while. For those of you who live with me in the Northern District, I ask that you please vote for me on November 3rd so that I can continue to strive and continue to work to make sure that Mississippians have the Supreme Court that they deserve. Adam Smith wrote, author of The Wealth of Nations, he wrote that you need 2 things, the country needs 2 things for prosperity: freedom and the rule of law. Please allow me to continue working to make sure that you have the rule of law in Mississippi so that you can enjoy your freedom. Thank you, and God bless you.